So I'll answer this question pretty broadly. I think that for any female athlete, female tennis player, I think these concepts apply generally whether you are a top 10 player or a junior player or just a competitive player kind of coming up. Um, I'd say for me, some of the physical qualities that we're really looking at prioritizing are the shoulder and scapular musculature, so range of motion in that area, and also strength, especially in the back of the shoulder and rotator cuff, like your primary decelerators when you're serving. Core and trunk stability, and including the hips as well for rotational stability. And then some triplanar stability, which is just kind of a way to describe an athlete's ability to maintain stability and control in multiple planes of motion. So whether that's kind of like landing on the serve, it combines rotation, also flexion, some lateral side bending, and how can someone control their entire body over a single leg in that position safely and with good stability and power and control. And this goes all the way through the chain from the shoulder to the trunk, the hip, down to the foot, including the knee as well, and force is happening there. And then as far as junior players, I think some special consideration would be in these areas, just monitoring for repetitive stress. In our youth and developing athletes, being mindful of growth plate related injuries and overuse injuries, especially in the lower back and spine with serving, introducing the kick serve at a later age, and then shoulder and elbow as well for growth plate in our younger athletes. But in general, I think shoulder stability and hip and trunk are pretty huge areas in a tennis player. So for female athletes, I think there are some specific considerations, but I think it really comes down to an individualized approach to whatever athlete you're working with, because female athletes can also be very different from each other depending on their previous injury history, their nutrition and sleep habits, what type of foundational strength or training history do they have, how long have they been training, how long have they played tennis exclusively, how long have they been participating in some sort of strength and conditioning program, and what's their fitness level. And then from a hormonal level, like blood work is important to consider and look at. Are there markers for things that we're missing that can affect a player's ability to recover and compete? So I think it's important to take all of those things into account. And then I think in female athletes as well, considering, are they hypermobile athlete? Are they hypomobile? And what areas to be looking at for, susceptible injuries in those areas? Can they control their body weight over, different positions and end ranges of motions on the court, getting out of corners? And then I think too is kind of tailoring their own input in as well, like what's important to them, what types of movements make them feel good or confident on court, and then what areas do they feel like they need to improve. So I think this helps to really individualize a player's program from a rehab standpoint, but also kind of like a prehab and injury prevention standpoint as well. And then just going back to previous injury history, I think once a player has had a certain injury, they're more likely to maybe have that injury occur again. And so, as a physical therapist, it's really our job to make those areas stronger, more robust, and hopefully, they're not having some sort of chronic injury or injury recurrence with competition. Yeah, this is a great question. The schedule is very challenging, especially, I mean, both the professional and the junior level. I think the schedule is demanding players to play every single week, and it's very hard to keep up, and also pretty unrealistic, I would say, want to have junior players trying to compete week after week. And When you're only playing matches week after week, you don't really have time for training blocks to do some strength training to rebuild power and strength. And that makes it very challenging to just be competing. It takes a toll on the body, and there's a lot of fatigue that goes into it. So finding training blocks is really important, and being mindful of when to take time off in the season. And, maybe you're missing out on specific competitions so that you can have a training block. This is also important when you're changing surfaces at the pro level, is having a training block or a break or time to transition between hard court and clay, clay and grass to hard. And so sometimes, with the travel as well, like taking that into account of it's okay to maybe miss certain competition weeks so that way you can have these blocks, you can manage fatigue and have time off court to kind of recover. And then along that as well, I think it's really important because there isn't a lot of time away or time off or these blocks in between to continue training while you're in competition. It's safe to do so as long as you're monitoring workload. And continuing to work on building strength and power in season is so important so that players are not deloading or undertraining throughout a season. Yeah, so key priorities for female players across kind of the lifespan, I would say for our 10 to 12-year-old age group, physical literacy and movement diversification is really important in this age group. We want to kind of make sports participation as still primarily for fun, and movement is for fun, and getting them involved in doing a lot of different movement patterns and different types of sports outside of tennis to help them build up their just movement, developmental movement patterns and feeling confident in their body from that like 13 to 15 age group. This is where building foundational strength is really important. So getting them able to control their body weight, without load, and then maybe with lighter loads. The body is growing, and so at this age, it's good to help with foundational strength training, and movement control with their body weight. From that 16, 18 and beyond, this is where resistance training can really transform a player's body and help them, get stronger, healthier on court. So training under load, training power under load, and then beyond is important after this age group. So primarily fun in the younger age groups, a lot of basic movement patterns, play-based training, and then moving into some developmental strength is important. I think across the lifespan, a good strength and conditioning program is really important. This is what helps keep players healthy, but also helps their performance on the court. And then the biggest thing to kind of look at too is just managing workload and overall volume. I think most injuries occur when there's a mismatch between workload and volume and what the body has been training previously. When there's big spikes in or out of competition, that's when we generally see, injuries occur. So it's really important to be monitoring volume, whether that's time on court, time off court. Serve volume is another metric to track as well. So if you're taking, a week off with a shoulder injury, you're not just going back and hitting a whole cart of balls and tracking, a gradual increase over time is really important. Yeah, I think one of the most common movement imbalances is just in a female athlete too, is just poor upper body strength, especially in the shoulder blades and scapular muscles and the rotator cuff. And these muscles are really important for acceleration on the serve, but also deceleration and control, and power. And so these areas, I think a really good warm-up routine. So utilizing time before practice to be working on either band strength, body weight movement, or some sort of loaded kind of plank position movement for scapular strength and control stability. I think even at the pro level, I see this is a lot of players kind of use the warm up to just go through the motions and just check a box. But this is really the time, every single day you're getting some sort of input to help you develop that strength and stability and control. So for me, I'm a big cuff and scap strength person. I think that's really important. And then the triplanar stability, or like that ability to control your body weight through multiple planes of motion. So, single leg movement patterns are important here. Single leg movement with rotation, and utilizing different moves in the dynamic warm up. You're getting that input, like I said, daily, and that's a really good way to tackle it, those movement imbalances with a tennis player. And then the last thing on that would be positional strength. So hip strength and end ranges of motion. So whether you're in a deep lunge position, a deep lateral lunge position, can you maintain that position while also rotating or doing an upper body movement? And that this helps players develop the strength to be able to push out of corners, or put different positions in the court, and kind of be strong at end ranges of motion. Yeah, I think education is huge in this part to help create buy-in and have players want to participate in their prehab or off-court, recovery routines. Doing the basics really well can help a player be really successful with their performance. So, are you getting enough sleep? That's one of the easiest things you can do. Nutrition. I think female athletes typically are under fueling, and so really educating on getting good energy sources before practice, before competition, and being able to hydrate so that way your body and your energy, or fatigue isn't the thing that's holding you back, in the third set of a match. I think period education and menstruation education is really important for female athletes. Having a regular period can help females, stay healthy, prevent injury, and also, develop more strength and recover quicker. So just having them be aware of that, and that's something that we're monitoring. And I think in general, this is kind of what I preach is, you have no business asking about the flashy modalities like, doing laser or Normatec boots or ice baths if you're not doing the basics well. So eating well, hydrating well, sleeping well, less screen time, so time away from sport is really important. And, I think this helps create buy-in too for, their long-term health and development when they're monitoring all these things off the court. Yeah, this is a great question. It's really important to be to work on a collaborative team and have open and frequent communication with team members. So whether it's with the fitness coach, the tennis coach, and then also physio, and anyone else who might be involved, if there's a sports psychologist or just others, support team members, it's important to meet often and communicate. I think we're always monitoring the athlete's well-being and checking in with their fatigue energy levels. The coach, physio strength coach, always talking to make sure like what's the practice plan for that day, what's the off-court fitness plan, does that align with the workload that we're trying to achieve for that day, whether it's a high intensity day or a lower intensity day. And then for the slams, it's having a good training block leading up to the tournament, and then being able to taper, some of the off-court fitness related training, and increasing the tennis, preparation training right before a competition. So we're tapering the gym away, and then maybe increasing more on-court specific training. So having those daily check-ins, and then also including the athlete and how they feel and what makes them feel prepared for a tournament is really important. At the pro level, a lot of players have off-court obligations with the media or their sponsors. So on those days, it's, taking that into account. Maybe practice will be a little bit shorter because of that, or we'll split up the day so that they can do that, and have some off-court time to rest and recover as well. But I think the biggest thing here is just communicating often and having a good plan for managing an athlete's workload, before a tournament and then during as well.